Okay, now we're going to look at diminished interval basics. A diminished interval is created by decreasing a perfect interval or a minor interval by a half step. Okay, so just as a minor interval is created by decreasing a major interval by a half step, these are diminished intervals. So they deal with both minor and perfect intervals. Okay, so our examples over here, we start with a minor third, which is, let's get our keyboard. Minor third, we've got D, which is 0, 1, 2, 3, up to F. 3 half steps, right? That's a minor third. So we'll go ahead and put 3 there for 3 half steps. Then, when we have a diminished third, which we abbreviate diminished by writing D-I-M, 3, we've got a D to an F flat. Now, if we notice on our keyboard, an F flat, there's no black key in between between the E and the F. So an F flat has to be an E, since a flat lowers a note by a half step. So, because we have an F flat, we only have 1, 2 half steps in between the D and the F flat, but we're still going to call it an F flat instead of an E natural. Okay, so 2 half steps. So you see how we decrease the number of half steps by 1. Okay. Now let's look at a perfect fifth, which is one of our 4 perfect intervals: perfect unison, perfect fourth, perfect fifth, and octave. That's one of our 4 perfect intervals. And with a perfect fifth, we have C to G. So let's start on C. That's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 half steps. 7 half steps between the intervals of a perfect fifth. Now if we decrease that by a half step, if we decrease this top note G by a half step, we only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 half steps. Okay? Because we take away a half step, remember that equals 1. There is math in music. Okay? Let's look at these diminished intervals. Diminished second. Okay? You might look at this word unison and think, well, why aren't they the same note? Why aren't they written the same? Well, I'll tell you. Okay? A C sharp and a D flat can serve very different functions as part of a musical chord. So whenever the notes are on a different line or space, and they might sound the same, but it's still a diminished second. So looking at the keyboard, we have C sharp, D flat. But because they are on different lines, even though they sound as a unison, they're still diminished second. Okay, so that's a diminished second. A diminished third is 1 whole step, or 2 half steps. And a diminished fourth is 2 whole steps, or 4 half steps. Diminished fifth is 3 whole steps, or 6 half steps. Diminished sixth is 3½ whole steps, or 7 half steps. Diminished seventh is 4½ whole steps, or 9 half steps. And finally, a diminished eighth is 5½ whole steps, or 11 half steps. Okay, so we're going to be using that key in a similar way to the key that we used for our minor interval basics. Okay, so let's go through a few examples. And a diminished second is obviously 0 half steps because it's a unison. Okay. As you notice, we're going to have all kinds of intervals in these exercises. We're going to have diminished intervals, perfect intervals, and minor intervals. Okay. So we should not have any major intervals on this worksheet. Remember that the abbreviation for diminished is DIM, the abbreviation for perfect is P, and the abbreviation for minor is M. You can also add an M over the minor. You can also add a line over the M, excuse me, to distinguish that it's minor. So start getting in that habit now. Let's look at what makes these intervals in our first examples the intervals, okay? So we've got a diminished fifth, they gave us the answer. Let's go ahead and count those half steps. Okay, 1, G sharp is 1, A natural 2, B flat 3, B natural 4, C natural 5, C sharp or D flat 6. So we've got 6 half steps in between. And as we see in our key, 6 half steps is a diminished fifth, so that's accurate. Perfect fourth. We've got C to F. So we've got C as 0. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 half steps. 5 half steps. Right there. Okay, and just like before, we're going to be writing our half steps out. Diminished eighth. Remember, an eighth is just another way to say an octave. But this isn't a true octave because if it were a true octave, this would be an F natural, not an F sharp. So let's go ahead and count. F sharp, G1, G sharp 2, A3, A sharp 4, B5.
Attention all students, the book fair is open, so please feel free to browse the media center and look at the great selection of books there. Also, yearbooks are on sale in the cafeteria at this time.
So we're on B5, C6, C sharp 7, D8, D sharp 9, E natural 10, and F11. So we've got 11 half steps. Takes a little bit of time, but at least we're accurate with it. Okay, diminished third. We know that a diminished third has 2 half steps, so let's go ahead and check it. We've got an A to a C flat. So A is 0, 1, 2. C flat, also known as B natural. So we know that it's 2 half steps. We can check it with our little key up here and know that it's a diminished third. Okay, this is a minor interval because it's got a lowercase m. So let's go ahead and check to see that it's really a minor second. Okay, and the main difference between a minor second and a diminished second is that a diminished second sounds like the same note even though it's written differently. So a minor second will end up sounding crunchy because of the notes being so close together. Minor second, we know from our last lesson, is 1 half step apart from the bottom note. So we've got an E and an F. Let's look. E, count up a half step. Looks like 1 half step to me. Let's go ahead and write that. Minor second, 1 half step. Okay, a diminished sixth. A diminished sixth. Let's go ahead and break this one down. We can see from our key that diminished sixth has 7 half steps, or 3.5 whole steps. We're going to use half steps just because it's easier to break things down by half steps. So let's go diminished sixth. We've got an A to an F flat. So A, starting with A, which is 0, A sharp, 1, B natural, 2, C, 3, C sharp, 4, D, 5, D sharp, 6, and then we've got an E natural, which would be 7, but we're going to go ahead and say F flat. So that one can be a little tricky, but remember that F flat is the same as E natural. F flat is the same as E natural in terms of half steps. So our diminished sixth will have 7 half steps. Okay, let's break down these first couple of lines here. All right. Remember that I'd like you to write the number of half steps below the note, below this line, and then I'd like you to write the quality and the number of the interval. The quality is diminished, major, minor, perfect, that kind of thing. So this is the quality. That's the quality, and then the number is the one that looks like a number. So remember, the quality comes first, and the number comes second, all the time. Okay. Okay, let's go with number 1. We've got a C sharp to an E flat, a C sharp to an E flat. So let's start on C sharp. That'll be 0, 1, 2 half steps up to E flat. So we know that we have 2 half steps between them. We can look up here. What's the interval with 2 half steps? It's a diminished third. So we know to write D, I, M, 3. Okay? And it's okay if you don't stay on the line. The lines are very short. Next we've got a C below the staff, all the way up to a C flat. So let's break this down. C will be 0. Let's count the half steps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 up to C flat. Remember that C flat is also known as B natural. So we've got 11 half steps. Let's write that below the note. 11 half steps, or a diminished eighth. D-I-M, 8. Check it out. Diminished eighth. Diminished eighths always have a look to them that's closest to an octave, but one of the notes, it looks like an octave, but one of the notes will have an accidental or a flat or a sharp. Okay? Number 3. We've got an F up to an E flat. F up to an E flat. So let's go ahead and count on our keyboard. F. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Start back down here. 8, 9, 10. 10 half steps. We look up here. Do we see 10 half steps up here? I don't see it. So, you can go back to your minor worksheet that you've already completed, and you can find that 10 half steps are a minor 7. 10 half steps are a minor 7. So it's helpful to keep these worksheets close by, because you will be using the same information that you completed on the previous worksheets to help you complete these worksheets, okay? And it's all about helping you guys become more familiar with these intervals. Okay, next we've got an E natural to an F flat. That's kind of weird, isn't it? Let's go ahead and break it down. E natural. How far do we have to go to get to an F flat? Not very far at all. It's on the same key on the piano. So, because the note names are different, we cannot call it a perfect unison. So instead, even though they sound the same, we must call them a diminished second. So remember, we've got 0 half steps, which means, according to this, that it has to be a diminished second. Diminished second. Remember that diminished seconds always sound as the same pitch or note. Okay? Moving along, the next one we have is a G to a D flat. G to a D flat. So let's go ahead and count this. G being 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 half steps between G and D flat. Go ahead and write that underneath the note. And we go up to our key. Which one has 6? There it is, diminished fifth. Okay? You want to make sure that you count the half steps first so that you can just look at the key and figure it out. Okay? So please do your best not to guess on these. Really count the half steps. Our next one is an E flat to an A flat. So let's go ahead and find our E flat. That will be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 half steps. Go ahead and write 5 under here. 5 half steps. Is the 5th half step on here? I don't think so. So it looks like we've got either a major or a perfect interval. Okay, we know that no minor intervals have 5 half steps in between, so it has to be a perfect interval. In this case, it's a perfect fourth. Okay. Moving on to our bass clef line. I'll put the keyboard up here. Okay, we've got a C flat to a C flat. Remember, we are in bass clef now. Let's go ahead and count the half steps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 half steps. Now, whenever something has 12 half steps, we call it an octave. 12 half steps, there are 12 notes in the chromatic scale. It's going to be an octave. For this assignment, we're going to call it a perfect eighth, even though we know that a perfect eighth, another name for a perfect eighth is an octave. Check that out. That's an octave. Okay? Our next one is a B up to a G flat. So let's start on B. B is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 half steps. 7 half steps. There we go. Now, knowing that we have 7 half steps, let's look up at our key. Diminished sixth is the one with 7 half steps. So we write diminished sixth. Next one is a G to a B flat. So let's find the G on the keyboard. Count up with me. 1, 2, 3 half steps. 3 half steps. we don't see 3 half steps up here, so we know that it must be a minor interval. So we have to look back at our minor to see which one has 3 half steps. And if you look back at your minor intervals, you'll see that a minor third has 3 half steps between the 2 notes in the interval. Make sure when we're writing our minor intervals that we write a small line over the M, just to make sure that I understand it's minor and that I understand that you know that it's minor. Okay, 3 more. Our next one is A flat to D flat, A flat to D flat. Let's count up. A flat is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 half steps. 5 half steps. So we know from our previous that 5 half steps is a perfect fourth. And you're allowed to do that. You're allowed to go back in the assignment and find things that match up in terms of the intervals. And it'll also help you when we take our test. Okay, so if you know that something has 5 half steps, you know that it can only be a perfect fourth. So obviously these 2 will match up. Okay, that'll help reinforce what we're doing. 2 more. We've got a D sharp. We have an F sharp up to a C. Okay, so let's find our F sharp on our keyboard. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 half steps. 6 half steps. We find up here at the top that the interval that has 6 half steps from bottom to top is a diminished fifth. So we're going to write diminished fifth. And then finally, our last one. These 2 notes are on the same line. We've got a C and a C. How many half steps are between C and C? C is 0. Oh, we're back at C. 0 half steps. And because there are no accidentals, and because this isn't a C sharp and a D flat, we can call this a P1 or perfect unison. Okay? Go ahead and do 3 and 4. Those are the lines down here by yourself, and we will check them in class.